everyone, welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while. I had a couple of huge projects that kind of like caught me up at work, and so here I am, but I'm back and I'm making something that's a little unusual in this video, which is I'm going to make my very first plushie. I know that this probably has been done probably about 8 million times. I'm going to be making a Junimo plushie, and the reason why is because if you remember in my last video I mentioned that I was going to be working on my sewing room, which is now an unmitigated disaster, but I have heard that Junimo like to inhabit spaces that have been abandoned by humans, and so I'm hoping that this little guy is going to be able to help me out with fixing up my poor sewing room. Okay, let's talk materials. So basically I'm going to be making 2 layers. The outer layer will be this lovely green polar fleece, probably polyester, but it's what I have. And then I'm going to make kind of an inner body to the plushie out of this fabric, which I panic bought way too much of. So I'm going to have kind of the inner plushie that will be stuffed with fabric scraps. I have so many of these, and then the outer layer right here will be washable, so I can take that off and just wash it. Junimo have these very cute little pink patches on their cheeks, so let's add some pink. And then for the arms and legs, I wanted something that would stand up, so I have this black felt right here. And pro tip, if you have a cat and you ever want to clean up cat fur, just go out and buy some felt, preferably an opposite color to what your cat has, and just leave it around. It's going to magically attract all of the cat fur in the vicinity and put it on the felt. So for the last piece of our materials, let's add a lint roller. Okay, so here I have my drafting tools: ruler, paper, pen and pencil. This is going to come in handy in a minute, and of course my scissors. This is a joke, these are fabric scissors. I'm putting them over here right now, calm down. Alright, so basically I've seen 2 different ways to make a circular plushie. Let's just go ahead and call them plushie 1 and plushie 2. And so basically 2 different designs. Again, for plushie 1, basically you cut like a rounded diamond kind of shape. It's almost a teardrop, except for that it's not more rounded at the bottom, so I guess you could make it more rounded at the bottom. You cut 4 of those and you sew them together, and that's plushie 1. For plushie 2, you cut almost more like a petal shape, if you think back to like drawing flowers in elementary school. So petal shape here. You cut 4 of those, and then you also cut a base, and the base is going to be just a big circle, of which I'm not great at drawing, but whatever. And you cut 1 of those and you put all of those together. So this one's 5 pieces and this one's 4 pieces. Of the 2 of them, I'm very much more inclined to go with plushie 2 because I want something that has more of just a flat base to sit on. So that's what I'm going to go with for this pattern. This is going to be more of kind of a hang out and sew with me video. This is not a tutorial. If you want a tutorial to make a Junimo plushie, again, I'm sure there's 8 million of them out on YouTube, but we're just going to hang out. We're going to do some sewing. We're enjoying the weather outside, and yeah, that's our goal for this video. So fun fact, I did this whole thing where I showed how to freehand a curve and then make sure that it's exact on the other side by just folding it over the center line. And then I realized that I hadn't recorded any of it, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. But you guys can see, you know, the fold line here. And basically just, yeah, anytime you wanna make sure something's exact, just fold it over the center and cut it out the other side. Ta-da! For cutting out the inner layer of this fabric frays more than the felt will, so I'm going to give it a 1/2 inch seam allowance, whereas the outer layer is felt. Felt's not going to fray, so I'm going to give it a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So because of that, this pattern actually does not include any seam allowance at all, so you can add as much seam allowance as you like. Okay, so at this point I have all my pieces cut out. I'm pretty much ready to sew, but I thought first, perhaps you might like to see what we are growing in our garden. Okay, so we have some very healthy basil and some not super great everything else. We're growing a little bit of, there's kale in the back, there's broccoli in the front. You can see that this one's starting to flower a little bit, and then there's some dill in the very back there. So that's this raised bed, and then we've got some containers and another raised bed. And this one, these right here are, focus, go ahead. These are carrots, and then over here we've got a little pot of rosemary as well. In this bed they've got a couple holes in their leaves, but if you look real close, these are radishes. Getting pretty tall, so we can probably harvest them soon. And then over here we've got tomatoes, strawberries, more tomatoes, more tomatoes, more tomatoes, and then over here we have more tomatoes. As you can see, the tomato situation is severe. They pretty much just keep seeding themselves and coming back up. Hello! So after our garden tour, I actually realized I needed to come inside because our next door neighbors are setting up for a party, and there's now a bouncy castle / moon bounce outside with a bunch of very excited kids. So if you hear any like excited shrieking in the background, that is why, but I figured it might be prudent to just move inside and do some sewing content in here. So if I were good at the internet, which I'm not, I would probably have some sort of, you know, Q&A, or this is what people on Instagram have been asking me about. Oh, hello, Angus. Speaking of which, but I don't, because I live under a rock. I don't really use Instagram or anything like that, so I think I'll just, you know, have our cozy sewing time and I'll talk about things that I think people might be interested in. So while we're, you know, hanging out and chatting, I've got my little Junimo plush to work on. Off camera, I tacked the eyes and the little blush thingies onto the face. Hello, Angus. If you hear meowing in the background, again, it's just our boy being a little insufferable. So I added these on. I changed to a darker pink fabric for 2 reasons. 1, I thought it might look better, but 2, and more importantly, this is a knit, which means it won't fray, which means I don't have to tack the edges under, which means that I won't go in completely off the rails and abandon this project due to just being very fed up with it. Okay, so let me see. Things that I think people would be interested in talking about. I mean, Angus, first off. He really, really likes to be engaged with whatever sewing project I am doing, generally not in a very helpful way, and especially if I'm trying to sew outside, which, you know, I was yesterday, he will actually hang out next to the door and yowl as though his heart is breaking. He's looking at me right now, being being insufferable again. And, you know, I would love to let him out. He is leash trained. He has like a little harness and a leash, which is nice. However, we in our apartment complex have a large number of feral cats. There's like a little colony of cats. We call them the sewer cats because they kind of live in the rain gutters and stuff. And, yeah, I know, kitten. And so even if, you know, I'm not worried about Angus running off, I would be worried about the sewer cats kind of getting to him, so that would be bad. And as far as I know, it's not a managed colony. Unfortunately, I would love to be able to arrange to, you know, do a humane trapping, vet visits, etc., but I just don't have funding for that. You know, maybe in the future that'll be something I can look into. Anyway, so quick sewing interlude for the so for the eyes and the cheek patches, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sew them on with a blanket stitch. So I will do just a little close-up of that because I think that that looks really nice, and I've seen it used a lot in both blankets and also plushies, so I just think it looks cute. The way that I like to do buttonhole stitch essentially has 2 or 3 different steps. What you're doing is you are making a corner-shaped stitch, and then the corner of the last stitch becomes like the long piece of the next stitch, essentially, if that makes any sense. So let me just show you. So I've got my last stitch right here, and then I'm going to go over and then down, you know, as close to exact to the other stitch as I can. So over, down, and especially for the inner edge of the blanket stitch, you want to try and keep these lined up in an imaginary line. So like this. So you're going to put the needle down but not draw it all the way through yet. And you're going to bring it back up at the kind of imaginary corner of the stitch. So you might need to take it out and then scooch it over a little bit more and make sure that it's as much of a 90-degree angle as you can get it, and then you're going to pull the needle all the way through, and you just have to kind of squish the thread down very carefully. And then what I like to do to make sure that this corner of the thread doesn't like scoot inwards is I like to take an extra little tiny stitch down through the corner there, and then right back up, almost but not quite coming out in the same place. And then that'll ensure that the outside of the stitch is going to stay in place. Hello! Welcome to the next day of the project. So 2 things we're gonna do today. First off, we're going to go ahead and stuff the inner plushie, I guess. I made this off camera because I figured there wasn't really much point in you watching me do the same step that I had just done with the green fabric, but in a different fabric. So made that off camera, and I'm going to stuff it today. And then the second thing is we're going to put the pieces of the outer plushie, so the green one, together, and I also get to finish putting the eyes and the blushes back on, because if you watched closely yesterday, you will know that I put them on the inside by accident. So last night I realized my mistake, and I had to take out about 2 hours worth of work and redo the whole thing, which was not fun, but we persevere. As you can see, I have the face on the outside of this now, so this is the inside, and I'm just stitching up and around, and then I'm gonna put it onto the base, and then our little Junimo is ready to go, which is awesome. So I did think about it a little bit, and I thought of, you know, what's one more thing that people will probably be interested in hearing about, which is my cat's nicknames. And this is actually, you know, a question that I get in real life sometimes from fellow cat owners, because sometimes cats have quite elaborate names, honestly. I did have, he's doing gymnastics on the floor, so if I look over and make weird expressions, that's why, because Angus is being weird. Hey kitten boo. Because some cats have quite elaborate names. For example, I have a friend who a while back had a cat who was called Twitch, but that was short for Gertrude von Twitchenkeister, which is quite a name, honestly. I was very impressed when I heard it for the first time, but our cat is just Angus. That's the name he came from. He just, you know, he just came with the name Angus. He's a rescue. So, but we have given him a variety of nicknames since then. For example, if he's mad at one of us, because we can't play with him, because like if I'm brushing my hair, for example, obviously I can't stop in the middle of that and play with the cat, but he'll get very very annoyed about that. So if he's mad, we say he's angy, because of course the meme, you know, no talk me, I angy, which is also short for his name, Angus, so I always thought that was hilarious. If he's in trouble, I like to call him Angostura Bitters. That's like his full name for, if, you know, if you're in trouble and your parents call you by your full name, that's his, you know, Angostura Bitters, etc. So that's, you know, if he steals one of my socks for a toy, just have kind of sillier names. Sometimes I call him Little Lion Man, Golden Boy, Croissant, you know, just related to the fact that he's a little golden brown marshmallow boy. Now, I could just use toy stuffing or pillow stuffing to stuff this plushie. There's really two reasons why I do it this way with fabric scraps. And number one is because it's cheaper. It is in fact free, because I'm literally just using my fabric waste and my thread waste. But then the second, and the one that's kind of more important to me, is that it's more environmentally friendly. So I'm not going out and buying, you know, polyester stuffing, which is just plastic. I'm literally just using up the fabric scraps and thread scraps that I wouldn't have any use for. I mean, this in no way represents the amount of fabric scraps that I have, but it's, you know, if you look at it, it's stuff that I really couldn't use for anything else, these tiny little scraps. So I'm just gonna take a second to point out that if you want to stuff a plushie or a pincushion or whatever like this, you kind of have to be prepared to make a mess. You will get fabric scraps all over yourself. That's just a fact of life if you are going to use this stuffing method, but again, very environmentally friendly and very cheap, so I like it. Alright, I've put down some blue felt so that any scraps that fall out of the plushie will just end up on the felt. In retrospect, I should have just put this down over my whole skirt, but you know what, live and learn. After several hours of stuffing this plushie, we now have just about ready to go. We've got, as I mentioned, one inner plushie. We have one outer plushie looking very cute. I did a little bit of research, definitely scientific research for no other purpose, to find out the, well, not find out, to double check the placement of little arms, little leggies, and the leaf and leaf stalk. So I'm just finishing up stitching the leaf, and then I'm going to put all of it together. Yeah, this is it. This is the cutest thing I've ever made in my entire life. Oh, hey. What are you doing here? Just hanging out? Okay, cool. So, you know how you helped out like at the community center with their craft room? Do you think you could maybe do the same with mine? Sorry, what's that? You want an apricot? Okay, well, I guess we just finished spring, so be right back.